think one of the big challenges that we face in all sectors, actually, doesn't matter whether it's construction, doesn't matter whether it's kind of retail, doesn't matter whether it's fast-moving consumer goods and manufacturing, is, you know, we have a kind of willful blindness which is set in at the moment, where we know what the complexity and the difficulty of our challenges are, but we're paralysed by a fear of actively engaging with them. Yeah, so, and I think this sense of fear, you know, we identify what the big challenges are. We know we don't have a sort of higher sense of purpose beyond sort of a commercial imperative. We know there's kind of risks out there which are quite systemic, which are threatening our business models. You know we have authoritarian and hierarchical structures within our organisations, which in a collaborative and collective type of context of the internet and the new ways of working are looking increasingly outdated and outmoded. And yet we identify all of those huge challenges and then we willfully ignore them because they're really difficult to deal with. So we pretend they're not there and we become willfully blind. So I mean, the fact that these problems are scary and big doesn't mean they go away. You know, they sit there. So we become scared. And the flip side of this is actually trying to understand where the positive opportunities for change come from. You know, and that really does require us to reinvent the way we work and measure what we do and get the different insights into the impacts of what we create. And I think where that becomes really interesting is when you change that perspective. You know, it's rather than ignoring the kind of increasing shadows which are approaching around you, it's understanding where the points of light and opportunity are starting to emerge. Yeah, so I think for big organisations it's quite difficult because it's hard to see where the bridge is between where you are now and where you need to be, which is often why we see a lot of creative disruption happening, because it's easier to build something new from the ground up and start on a different way, and a different way of running things, and a different way of measuring things, and I say understanding different impacts, than it is to actually transmute or transmogrify one of these big, you know, established institutions. That said, you know, we start to talk about this as lifeboats, you know, where big institutions are starting to create the little maverick entrepreneurial, you know, lacunae of activity, which is offering them a kind of a sense of hope of like, well, this is how we might get out of this. And those lifeboats, I think, are increasingly important. And that's where purpose-led innovation in even large established institutions is absolutely essential. Yeah, no, I think these lifeboats are going to be essential. You know, and you know, I think Warren Buffett, you know, from the kind of investor perspective, is that sometimes, you know, you have to give up patching up the leaking boat and you just build a new one. You know, because the leaking boat ain't going to work, it's going to sink, and it's inevitable. So you need to be focusing on building the new boat, which is going to get you out of the mess that you're in. And I think the sense of optimism and the sense of future literacy that we require is going to be fundamental. You know, we have to believe this is possible. You know, we have to have faith in our own abilities because we already have the evidence scattered around. It's not at scale, you know, and it's not mainstream, but all of the solutions we need technologically and economically actually already exist. You know, the main barriers are political, social and cultural and psychological. You know, we have to believe that this is possible. There's huge friction between, you know, running a big ship and trying to build a lifeboat at the same time. Even the Pentagon now talks about a volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world. That's the world we're navigating. So if you're mid-career, you know, you are entering territory now that you've not seen historically in your career. You know, and if you're 45 years old or older and you're really good at what you do, you might just see your career out without having to massively change. If you're under 45, you better start thinking about what the lifeboats are and be building those, because there's going to be so much disruption. You know, we talk about this, that it's hard for big institutions to be inventive, you know, when they're not connected to a sense of higher purpose and they don't practice constant innovation, you know, which is why the banks don't invent PayPal. It's why EMI Music doesn't invent Spotify. It's why the Intercontinental Hotel Group doesn't invent, you know, Airbnb. It's why the London Public Hackney Carriage Office, God help us, didn't invent Uber. You know, it's like, it's very hard for them to see where the disruption comes from. It's much easier to build a new boat. Which side of history do you want to be on? The right side or the wrong side? Me, on the wrong side. Sorry. And everyone goes, fuck, why are we on the wrong side of history? And then they go, yeah, okay, of course we understand why we're on the wrong side. Yeah. But I like the way he frames it as like an inevitability. It's like, you know, you're either with us or against us, but it's saying it's not a case of if this happens, it's a case of when, because it has to. So, you know, do you go down fighting, or do you flail around like an idiot trying to continue and perpetuate that which cannot be sustained?
Yeah.